Well, here at the Oil and Gas Council in Paris, there's been a lot of interest in the growing number of indigenous companies in Africa who are developing their own very successful businesses. And in Nigeria, one of the most successful and one of the biggest is Shoreline Natural Resources, and Ladi Bada is the CEO, and he joins me now. There is a kind of discrepancy between the amount of reserves that indigenous companies have in Nigeria and the amount of oil that's coming out at the moment. 7% you actually is in terms of what's being generated, but you've got a third of the reserves. What are you doing to try and balance that out?
Well, thank you very much. In recent times, as you know, there's been a lot of divestments by the IOCs. This speed of divestment as well has led to increased accumulation of reserves by the independents. But just as you rightly mentioned, we're way below in terms of production. Most of the reserves that have been brought onto the independents are largely onshore, in the more volatile onshore environment where there are a lot more challenges with actually transporting or piping crude to export terminals due to security situations with bunkering and so I think that really is where the challenges are. But in terms of actually running the fields to increase production, we've all been able to show that it is very possible to understand the subsurface and make the subsurface work effectively to actually increase that production beyond 7% to the full 30%.
And so that's what you're doing. You have an existing resource which is actually producing at the moment. Not as producing as much as it could be, though. Why is that?
Well, Shoreline Natural Resources, our field, OML30, is one of the largest onshore assets. We have a reserve, a certified reserve of about 1.1 billion barrels, so which is quite large even for a nation. And but unfortunately, our production does not show the kind of results that you would like to see with the reserve that size. Now, it is not really as a subsurface risk, as I said earlier on. We can't produce it. OML30 itself, at some point in time in its life, when it was under Shell, had produced as much as 250,000 barrels. But right now, we're averaging 40, 50,000 when we are producing.
So how are you going to get up to that 200,000
So what we plan to do is threefold. First thing is in the third quarter of this year, we're increasing our optimization plans, which is really rigorous activities that we can do quick win projects in which we can add another 20,000 barrels very quickly in the third quarter. And by the fourth quarter, we've already made application and have application approved by the Nigerian authorities to be able to start drilling. So we plan to start drilling by Q4, latest by early Q1 2016. So with those two, we believe we can see a growth of 40, 50,000, and they're ramping up as we increase our drilling plans.
Yeah. Now, you're a privately owned company. You're in partnership with Heritage.
Yes, we are.
But, you know, one must ask the question, therefore, you've got ambitious plans. How are you going to fund that? And how are you funded?
Well, first of all, I mean, we funded as a company through a reserve-based lending facility, which is from a consortium of both foreign and Nigerian banks. And we're quite proud of the Nigerian banks. Because over the last 2-3 years, they've been able to step up to the plate to increase their funding capacity. But in terms of funding the growth of the company, the drilling activities and quick win activities we're doing, we're cash rich from day one. We've been producing from day one, and cash flow can sustain the development growth that we have.
So, but several challenges. I mean, you've already talked about one, which is that you've got the pipeline. You own that pipeline. Other people use it as well.
Sure.
But unfortunately, there are some who decide, well, actually, it's running over there. I'll go and siphon a bit off. You're getting a lot of loss that way. What can you do about that? And indeed, what could the new government of Nigeria do to improve matters?
The pipeline situation really is a terrible situation. I mean, it's not a fun matter, but people have joked and called many of the major trunk lines sprinkler systems because they really are just leaking oil all throughout the parts of their length. We own 45% interest. Our joint venture owns the Transfer Cutters pipeline, which is the largest export pipeline in the Western Delta. And that pipeline, unfortunately, it's about 97 kilometers long, but there's roughly about 30 kilometers of it, which is in, I would like to say, inhospitable regions, swamp regions and stuff like that. And they do get heavily bunkered by all sorts of criminals. And those losses in itself are significant, what we lose in terms of production from there. But our greatest losses is that when they do bunker, the guys who do this are not kind enough to lock the tap, so to speak, or when they finish bunkering. So we have spillages that do occur. So, but unfortunately, once we have any form of leakages in any form, we have to immediately, for environmental reasons, we have to shut off production and repair those leaks, even though they are caused by third-party interference. Unfortunately, it's those stoppages, those shutdowns that we're forced to do regularly that leads to outages for us, which is really where our problem is. But in terms of what the government can do, we really, as a company, we cannot secure the pipeline physically. It is the job of the government, and we have made representations to this new government in Nigeria. Which
and what was the reaction? Are you positive about it?
We are positive because they too were quite surprised when we told them the extent of reserves that the indigenous companies own and what we're losing in terms of potential production. And then we're able to make a calculation to the government to see actually, because government take is roughly 80% of all oil production, at least in the joint ventures. And we're able to show them exactly what they're losing, and they are working up to it. And they are promising, and we're in discussions with them for them to increase security in those pipelines, because without that pipelines being secured, they will continually undermine any activities, both for us as indigenous companies and also for the government.
And finally, of course, the oil price has been very low. It's recovered a little bit. Are you now confident that it's going in the right direction and that your business model is geared towards the lower price?
Well, I mean, we are thankful that prices have moved up north of 40, 50 that we initially, or 50 that we initially saw. We're averaging easily 60, early 60s now. And the truth of the matter is that onshore where we're in production, our production costs are quite low. We break even at much lower prices than the present oil prices. So we have no real concern in terms of the oil prices. And what it has done is that it has made us a lot more cost conscious, a lot more effective with how we manage our various contractors and vendors. And they have been understanding, and quite a lot of them are also reducing costs that they're charging us also.
All right. Okay, Ladi Bada, thank you very much indeed for joining us.
Thank you so much for your time.